That's what we do. So, as we were talking, it's a very big day for Chicago, but then still you found time to be here. That shows how important this conversation is. And Bob, thanks for inviting all of us here, Executives Club. I think this is a very timely conversation that we are having. Who do we have on the panel today? Are some of the disruptors in the various industries. I'll start from all the way on the other side of the stage is Steve Betts. And whenever, as a moderator, I try to introduce people, I either overemphasize things that don't matter, or underemphasize things that matter a lot. So I just tell their names and let them tell who they are. So Steve, tell them your background, who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm SVP and CIO at Healthcare Service Corporation. You probably know us better as Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we run 5 Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, including Illinois and Texas are the 2 biggest. We are the 2nd biggest company in the Blues and the 4th biggest health insurer in the country with over 15.5 million members. One of the things that's special about HCSC is that we are member-owned. And we're very purpose-driven to do everything in our power to stand by our members in sickness and in health. I'm a firm believer that every company is a technology company, whether they know it or not. So as a technology leader, you've got a choice. You can either sit back and wait for the business to figure it out, right, or you can be the business, right, and lead by being a business leader through technology, and that's what we're all about at HCSC.
Thank you very much. And Steve has been a tremendous civic leader. He's on the board of Lumity, which is a big nonprofit center here. And he also was, when I was the CIO for the state of Illinois, he was on the advisory board helping us transform the state using technology. Now, transforming and state don't go in one sentence together too often, but we tried. Now, as exciting as the insurance industry is, the next speaker that we have is from a less exciting industry, maybe the NFL, football. Justin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Justin Saul. I'm the Vice President of IT for the Chicago Bears. So oftentimes I get asked questions like, why does a football team need an IT department? What I manage is pretty much standard IT that any organization has. So we have all the, let's call them the unsexier things in terms of networking, end user support, infrastructure, storage, all those things that make up any organization. But then I also manage our football side in terms of our analytics, our football development. I've been with the club about 3 years now. I would say this last season was by far the most fun. If anyone follows our team, you know why. So really looking forward to talking about sort of the experience that we've gone through over the last 3 years. It's really been a story of building a foundation, I think, that has enabled us now to look at what are these disruptions that are coming that we can either respond to or take advantage of as they make sense for us.
Well, thank you very much, Justin. And then we have Kim Brown. Kim's worked across multiple American icons, including GE, and she's with American Medical Insurance right now. Kim, tell us a little bit more about you, and then I want to ask you more about your other side, which is essentially human. So save that, just introduce, but then don't go into details of that.
Sounds good. So my name is Kim Brown. I currently am leading marketing and communications and the digital transformation at the American Medical Association's insurance group. I joined in January, so we have some incredible things we're working on there with both our members, and then the insurance group is a subsidiary of the AMA. So we do a lot of fun work in insurance as well. We'll talk probably more about that. Prior to that, I worked at GE, and I was a marketing leader leading their digital transformation within the renewable energy business unit. So that matrix of digital into the renewable energy business unit. I also founded an advisory company called Centrally Human, which we'll talk about later, which informs a lot of the work that I do when it comes to digital transformation to drive corporate profits.
And then a lot of time what happens is, the moderator introduces the panel members and everybody's like, wow, those guys are great. And then after the event, they think like, who was the moderator? So the moderator you have today is Hardik Bot. As Bob was talking about with Amazon Web Services, the cloud computing business of Amazon. And prior to joining Amazon about a year and a half ago, I was the CIO for state of Illinois, worked for Governor Rauner. And then in the 2.5 years that I worked there, with the governor's drive and executive support, first time in the history of the state, we consolidated all of the 38 different siloed IT entities into one unified IT agency called the Department of Innovation and Technology. And prior to that, so this was a Republican governor. I worked for a Democratic mayor, which was Richard M. Daley. I was a CIO for the city of Chicago back during the last decade. Between the two CIO stints, I led the global business development for Cisco's smart city business. So we were talking, Bob and I, about the international travel versus the US travel that I have to do a lot in this role. So what we are trying to discuss today, or at least talk about, and then the way we are going to run this is very casual. I have a few questions for them, but then anytime you guys have a question after I finish the first round, just raise your hand and we'll ask you to let you ask a question to the panelists, not me, these guys, and then we'll basically go it that way. So technology is definitely, as we see it, has been a disruptor for quite some time. Whether it is when we had the first industrial revolution, somebody put wheels together and turned it into a vehicle that moves from one place to the other. And then somebody took that vehicle and put that underneath a suitcase, and suddenly we have rollerboards that we are carrying. So technology, some way of innovation and technology has been changing our lives significantly. But what has happened in the last, I'd say about 12, 15 years is we have found things like mobility. We have found things like faster connection speeds. We have found things like cloud computing that brings down the barriers for newer technology and uses of technology significantly lower, and that has now exponentially changed how technology moves through not just one place or one country, but across the entire world. So when we had like the first computer, it took years for that computer from going from the US to India. And now today, as Uber comes out, within a few days, it starts kind of changing, impacting lives on the other sides of the world. So, and then there is also the other side of this disruption, which is on people, which is on workforce, which is on how the society operates and everything. So as we think about this, we want to talk about what are these disruptors. We want to talk about how these disruptors are affecting the industries that these guys are in, and then how are they coping with the impact on the workforce they're there. So let's start with the Chicago Bears, and let me ask Justin. He talked about his role at the Chicago Bears, but he has done some tremendously transformative projects in the last couple of years since he's been at the Chicago Bears. So let's hear about what are these disruptive technologies for the Bears, for the NFL, and then what have you been doing for the last couple of years with it?
Sure. So like I said, it's been 3 years now, and we've really gone on sort of a digital transformation. I mentioned that it's been very foundational in our focus, and we're now to the point where we can start taking advantage of that foundation. About 3 years ago, we started on this cloud migration journey, and really we took an approach there to look at all of our business capabilities. I'm a firm believer that all technology investments should start with whatever your business strategies are and your business capabilities are that you're trying to enable. So after we kind of looked at the full spread of business capabilities and understood, what are those strategic capabilities that matter a little bit more to driving our top line or potentially our bottom line, you can start to have an understanding of which applications and technologies are better candidates than others for potentially sourcing or moving to a cloud-based model. So we've gone through that full transformation. Obviously, it's no secret that the NFL has a strong relationship with Microsoft, so we're heavily invested in the Azure stack and all the SaaS models that Microsoft offers. So that's been a huge part of our kind of freeing up resources and removing a lot of the bottlenecks that prior to this transformation that the club was experiencing. So along with that, we've built some foundational things in our stadium. We now have a Wi-Fi system, which a little bit ashamed to say, prior to 2 years ago, there really was, I wouldn't even call it a robust system. It was a small kind of localized Wi-Fi system that we tried to charge fans, I think, $1.99.
It's like the Chicago airport.
Yeah.
Right. So we now have that foundational capability in our stadium that enables, some of these capabilities that are starting to be expected more by our fans in terms of wayfinding in the stadium, wait times, mobile ticketing. We've just announced that we're going fully mobile with our tickets for next season. So that's a huge step in the right direction for our club. Organizationally, we've really taken a look at what our operating model is too, to support the future and what disruptions we may see or have yet to see. And that's been a lot about providing both structure in terms of we need to have real roles and responsibilities. We were a pretty immature organization coming from a place where it was pretty common to see one of our lead engineers, network infrastructure, doing password resets, and that's not the best consumption of that person's time. So culturally, though, that also plays into that, in that we're one team. We all have a role. Your role is password resets when I'm talking to a help desk analyst, and that isn't the role of, say, like a network engineer. But it all matters in terms of achieving the goal. The last thing really foundationally that we're doing now is we're under a huge renovation of our practice facility. So we currently have about 150,000 square foot practice facility up in Lake Forest, and then we're doubling that. So shortly here in the next couple months, we're opening that facility. So we're about 300,000 square feet now. And so with that, we've taken that as an opportunity to literally build the foundation in terms of things like what fiber we're putting into the building, what network cabling we're installing as well, so that we don't have any network bottlenecks or infrastructure constraints that may hold us back in the future.
One of the things, as Justin and I were talking about as we were preparing for this, I did not know that Bears do not own the Soldier Field.
Correct.
And that's in most cases the clubs own the stadium.
Yeah, it's so I did a little consulting in the NFL prior to this role, and we found it really hard to find comparable clubs that have the exact same business model. You'll see clubs that either own their stadium or are family owned, some are publicly owned, some are a shared entity across kind of a portfolio of businesses, and so they're able to share resources when it comes to certain capabilities.
So as a fan, our experience depends on NFL, depends on Bears, and depends on the city of Chicago. All three of them working together.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a new thing. I did not know about it. But then as we think about, at the end of the day, Justin's stakeholders are the players. Justin's stakeholders are the fans. And so we cannot take the person out of the equation that we are trying to serve, even if whatever disruption the technology brings. And that's what Kim is about. I mean, Kim, we really do want to know, how do you keep the person at the center? Because, when you talk about marketing, you have to keep the person at the center. And to me, centrally human, what your nonprofit is something around that. And then how do you keep this person at the center as things keep disrupting?
Right, good question. So a little bit of context into how it started. I was working at Axiom, a big data company, and leading a business development group. And I had a lot of executives at big brands call me up and say, can you just tell me what all this jargon means? I've just bought a bunch of stuff. I don't think I'm using it. Someone told me I need to buy more stuff. Do I need to buy more stuff? And so I was in a really great position with my business metrics where I could really say, I don't think you do. Like, I actually think you're only using 5% of what you have, and so buying more isn't going to help you. And so if we think about 15 years ago when the iPhone came out, I don't know if you all remember, we thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. We're all going to be so connected. We're going to be like, all these barriers that we have are going to be taken care of. And the reality is, we feel farther apart than ever before. As business leaders, from a B2B side and a B2C side, and as consumers to each other. So when I was on the phone with these executives, explaining to them how digital worked and explaining to them how to use it to make money, how to reach their customers, which is really the end goal, that was really where Centrally Human was born from. Where I realized there was this need to explain how to use digital data and technology to facilitate the real human connection that all of our businesses are actually grounded in. At the end of the day, I want to connect with you, whether through a transaction or a membership or a service, whatever that is. it ends up being that one-to-one human connection. So that's where Centrally Human was born. Your question about how do we keep that at the center, it is really challenging. And what I found is, in today's culture, the expectation on companies are no longer to be businesses, but all of your businesses are actually expected to act like human beings. People want to know who you are, how your employees operate, how you treat your employees, what's your mission statement, are you doing any kind of sustainability efforts? And the products that we sell are so commoditized now, even if we like to think they're differentiated, what really helps businesses stand apart is this idea of becoming human. And so what we've done is take this concept, and in the marketing space, typically you say, okay, well, I understand your consumer, and then work with them. And what I've done is flip the model and say, no, you've really got to know yourself. So who are you? Why do you exist? What makes you different? How are you going to treat people? And in that moment that you work with your customer, are you going to bring your authentic self to the table? And that really helps from a digital and data standpoint weed out what are we doing now because we're just doing it for the sake of doing it versus adopting technology or implementing different digital or IT structures for the sake of making that customer intersection really powerful and meaningful. So if your business and the way that your business operates doesn't make sense to do heavy interaction with email, then why are you doubling down and building out some incredible marketing automation software for email if you really are a call center business? And that's what you want to be generating, and that's where you really get that full customer experience. So it's this idea of knowing yourself and then backing into how to apply your digital and technologies to facilitate that brand experience. Versus the last 15 years, we've just been doing an incredible amount of testing to understand the technology. Now the shift is almost curating it to make sure that any disruption that we bring feels authentic to the companies and the businesses that we are and actually makes that transaction, whatever that is, powerful and meaningful so we have that customer relationship.
Fantastic. It is so important to keep that human being in the center. And then, when you think about MLB, the NFL, sorry, NFL, you're thinking about those body sensors, and immediately as soon as the shot is taken or the goal is done, whatever it is, you see the stats coming out from either Microsoft or AWS, and it shows, and you are right in the middle of the game. You know what's going on. It's so visible. Even marketing is like you can collect so much data about individuals and then have personalized marketing to them. So even there, technology and the disruptions used rightly is very visible. Steve, insurance and disruptive technology, there is not much visibility as to how do you use disruptive technology in your industry?
Yeah, so let me build a little on what Justin said in terms of the foundation that we went and built at HCSC, and then how we're using it today. So the whole people process technology, just a couple of highlights there. The first thing was building on what I said in my intro. You got to change the mindset and the culture of the organization. And we also changed operating models to embed members of our team deeply partnering with the business areas. Brian here on the front row is one of those members of the team, deeply embedded as a strategic partner. And that concept of bringing technology to change the business strategy is a key element of that role. We also changed how we work. So going to a much more of an agile, dynamic approach, extreme programming, Scrum Agile scale. We converted our workspaces, so we have 200,000 square feet now of digital lab space, all open plan, sit to stand, kind of very startup like in its model. And then on the technology side, moving to a fundamentally rethinking our digital and data foundation. So moving to a data lake with enterprise consumption, internal and external data at scale, and then digitizing our core. So we're having an API strategy that sits on top of a lot of the legacy as we modernize it, and lets us go at digital speed on top of a very legacy, very complex legacy environment. So I've been there 4.5 years now, so we're coming an accelerator. So the foundation is strong, but still strengthening. Now we're into the value stage. So what are we doing now, to your question, Hardik? One of the initiatives I'm particularly excited about is something we call advanced customer engagement. So we have tens of millions of calls every year, or touch points with our members, with our 15 million members. And often they'll call for something fairly mundane, like what is the status of my claim? What is my deductible? And you can give them the answer and they'll probably be happy and you hang up, or they can go to the digital app and look it up and they'll be satisfied. But that's not bringing the most value to our members that we can bring. Right? That's not keeping our members healthy and helping them navigate to affordable quality care. The way we do that is we mine that digital and data foundation that we have. So if you're calling in for a claim status, maybe you didn't pick up a prescription. Maybe you're due for a scheduled preventive test. There's some next best action that is going to be best for your health. And if we know that right at the point of interaction, we can interject that. So we can answer the question that was asked, but we can also prompt our customer associates, create that workflow within the digital app to improve the health of our members more effectively. And to me, that model, what I call kind of a ubiquitous intelligence embedded in workflow, I think is the model for all industries. That's not a healthcare thing, but that is how we will build systems going forward.
That's fantastic. Connecting technology with insurance industry, it's fascinating. So as you may have noticed, we have not gone into technology yet for this, because we all believe that technology is just going to be continuously changing. It's the application of technology. So far we have talked about what's happening right now. We want to now look into the upcoming future, and that's kind of changing gears. So if anybody has any questions, so feel free to ask or just raise your hand so we can let you ask the question. We want to now look into the future, because as Bob was talking about, the speed of disruption is going to just keep on increasing. So how are we prepared? What are we seeing coming in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years? So let me start with you, Justin, again. So from the Chicago Bears perspective, you talked about the new facility. We can talk about AR, augmented reality, virtual reality. Are you guys building any technology where Cody Parkey can just aim right and shoot?
He's no longer with the organization.
Maybe the next kicker.
Sure. So I think I think what the future looks like for us, a couple things are, and you touched on it a little bit, Hardik, in terms of the AWS data that is heavily marketed and shown on TV. If you've watched any NFL games in the past season, since 2015, players have had sensors in their pads. So now, and we're finally starting to see the fruition of that data being collected and the use of it in terms of cool consumer things like top speed, acceleration. How fast did Tariq Cohen accelerate to the end zone? I saw some cool things this season on that, but really we get access to that data as well. So that's going to be, I think, the use of that data is really going to become a game changer, a differentiator for football clubs in terms of their performance, because at every fraction of a second, it's pretty mind-changing in terms of how a scout operates or a coach operates, in that at every fraction of a second, I know where every player is and the ball on the field. So we can literally say to a scout now that that wide receiver at the point of the release of the football has this much separation from his defender. So that's really a metric you can start to use in all kinds of ways in terms of contract negotiations, potentially, if you're seeing a guy fall off a little bit, performance in terms of free agency, but it comes with some challenges as well. Can we use that? Is that ethical to use that data? Who owns that data? Those kinds of things. So I think the use of that data and the clubs that are ready to receive that data, process that data, and act on it are going to excel the most, I would say. And there's a big cultural element to that as well. When you're talking to a football coach or a scout, these are different types of people. They maybe have been doing this for 20 to 30 years, and so to tell them now you're going to make your decisions based off this data versus just a simple eye test that they're sort of used to, That's a big cultural shift. So that's something that clubs are going to have to address culturally as well. In terms of augmented reality and virtual reality, we do have some of those things going into our new facility as well. The collective bargaining agreement with our players restricts and has limits on how much quote-unquote practice time our players can have. And that practice time is defined as whether there's a football on the field, or whether if I'm an offensive player, if there's a defender on the field as well. So some very specific things around that. So if we can start to simulate repetitions by putting some virtual team across the line of scrimmage from them, then we can absolutely increase the number of repetitions that our players get to see. So really some cool things with technology that enable our team's performance.
That's amazing how technology could be a key differentiator when it comes to competing, getting the teams ready. But at the same time, technology and education also becomes a key differentiator when it comes to whether you have access to it, or you don't have access to it, timely access to it, not timely access to it. And Kim is affiliated with Northwestern. She continues to stay very closely attached with Northwestern. And one of the things when I was working for the state, we did a lot of work around the future of work and how that's going to completely be different compared to what we have been used to in the last, let's say, for our generation. And then there are reports, like if you look at McKinsey Global Institute report, it says that because of the disruptive technologies, anywhere between 30 to 70% of the jobs that exist today will be completely changed or eliminated, taken over by, like paralegal is a great example of that, will be taken over by technologies, by AI. So there's a huge impact that technology is going to make on the workforce and the way we work. Kim, what do you see? You are working closely with Northwestern. Are there efforts ongoing to make sure that society is ready for that?
Yeah, really good question. I think there's, and I'm going to say two things and maybe three. But I think one, there's the reality that we have existing workforces, and to your point, work is going to change dramatically. We've invested a lot in that human capital, and so how do we make sure that they're going to adapt and change through their careers to be able to meet the business needs and exceed the business needs to compete in this new world? And on the other side, that talent acquisition, all the folks coming out of education and making sure they're prepared to meet the demands of today, tomorrow, and whatever it's going to look like. And so, I use this term iterative innovation. I don't think there's going to be kind of the next iPhone in the next 5 years, right? Everything's going to be iterated on using big data, using, all these minuscule things that a business needs to compete and differentiate. We're talking about someone who has a really smart idea sitting inside your team, being enabled and empowered to say, I'm going to act on this idea. And that little bit of scale innovation, that little seed of an idea, if we can activate those folks to all think of themselves as innovators, then that idea is going to come to fruition. That results in margin or time saved. And so I think that's the one part, and as far as education goes, and I'll touch on this in a second, I think that's the one part we need to start activating our teams to start all thinking of themselves as innovators. It's not some entrepreneur, it's not someone in Silicon Valley, it's not your technology team. We're all in this together, and if you've got an Excel macro that's saving you 5 minutes a day, it's your job as an innovator to share and educate with the organization to scale that iteration. On the other side, the folks coming out of school, the young people, I think we're going to get to a point where we've got to have really unique makeup of teams. So as we start talking about data efficacy, and as we start talking about applications and the business rights and who owns it, and is this really something that we should be doing in the first place given our brand identity, I see the folks coming out of school working in the technology space are not going to all be hard data scientists. You're going to have philosophy majors. You're going to have marketers and communicators. You're going to have business majors and lawyers who know how to own those contracts. I'm going to go to fight for my data rights and making sure that I protect them, because that's going to be your biggest business commodity. That's your secret sauce in the future. So I want to make sure that I've got a lawyer who understands data to write those contracts.
You're saying lawyers have future?
Lawyer. Yeah. Big. And that they understand how to go to bat and read for those nuances of data rights and ownership and all of that and privacy compliance. Philosophy and the arts are going to become huge, especially in this world of AI. I want teams, if we're developing machine learning algorithms, I want a data scientist paired up with someone who literally is trained in human thought and thinking and decision making and ethics, because that's how our world's going to run. And as global citizens, we should care a lot about diversity on a data science team. But as building businesses that are going to compete, I think the company that's got a philosopher with someone who can code is going to have a massive competitive advantage, because they're going to be able to bring that human connection to a digital experience in a lot more authentic way than just someone building tech and programming it. And so things that universities like Northwestern are doing, they're starting to create these cross-collaboration programs with schools and with businesses. And so a lot of companies, I actually think your company is tapping into, and you could probably explain this better than me, tapping into computer science at Northwestern, right?
Yeah, we've had a program on the data analytics side. So yeah, we've been working with some of the students there.
Yeah, and it's great because they don't have the business constraints.
Yeah.
So they can actually use that imagination and not necessarily worry about, and I'm sure you're giving them actual constraints, but they're not so worried about the politics and someone said no to this 2 years ago, so would I do it again? They're just saying, with this much money and this is the outcome, figure it out. And that's really remarkable, bringing young people into this business setting so they're not just designing in an ideal, but they're learning how to design with actual business constraints, budget, time, outcome. The other thing they're doing is crossover programs. So a lot of computer science and programmers are working with the School of Medill and figuring out how do we bring great journalism and storytelling into this digital era and connect with people and connect data and really use data to inform the decisions. There is incredible work being done from an engineering perspective to do prosthetics and with healthcare, where you've got an engineer, mechanical engineering, teaming up with someone in a medical school to help a child who can't actually go in a pool because of whatever constraint, get into a mechanism that allows them to swim and get water therapy. So that's really, I get goosebumps thinking about it, but like I'm excited about the world that we're coming into, because universities are figuring out how to crossbreed schools, break down an education, education has a ton of silos. So breaking down those education silos to make sure that students are cross-training. And now you're getting kids coming out. I've actually got an intern this summer. She's an education major with a minor in language and integrated marketing. And she called me up and was like, hey, can I intern with you this summer? Yes, 100%. Can you do it now? Like, I can think of 18 things I can do with someone like that can speak 2 languages, understands how to teach, and can also activate in a digital marketing space. So that's going to be the future.
That is fascinating. Who would have thought on the Disruptive Technologies panel we'll be talking about philosophy, arts, ethics, and all these topics. It is becoming critical, though. I mean, if you think about in the public sector, there's a huge debate around a couple of newer technologies. I mean, obviously AI is not new, but the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning when it comes to determining somebody's eligibility for state benefits or any benefits that you get, the people are talking about unconscious biases that get into the algorithm as you are determining auto-determining eligibility there. There's also a huge debate going on around recognition, facial recognition, and the application of that, potential misuse of the technology. So it is very important that we keep, apart from the workforce disruption and the preparation of that, the actual uses of technology and the ethical applications of those uses of technology. And again, as you may have noticed, we have still not talked about technology, but I think on a technology panel we cannot resist for too long. We should talk about a little bit what do these guys see as disruptive technology. And Steve at HCSC, they have come up with a great artifact that talks about the technology waves that Steve sees that are currently, and then how he's seeing progressing in the next few years. So Steve, we do want to hear about that, and also if we can see that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll start talking. I think we were going to try and present our radar slide up here as well. So, we established an incubator within HCSC about 3+ years ago. Initially centered around innovation, and so leveraging a very much of an outside-in approach, kind of a design thinking approach, we've embedded across our incubator. We looked at the technology and said, well, how are these technologies going to impact our healthcare and HCSC? So it's maybe difficult to see if I can talk to it. What I will say is the ones in the top left are the technologies that I talked about in that initial use case. So, no, you're good. Looking at analytics, API foundation, bringing in data from multiple sources is how we're creating that ubiquitous intelligence underneath all of our business workflows. So that's an example of, as you look at this chart, value is the y-axis there, and then the time to implement is on the y-axis. So those top left corner are the here and now technologies. So let me talk a little bit about what we see coming up next. So right in the middle of the second band under Explore, which is actually sliding into Pilot, more so as I update this chart, is blockchain. So there's a lot of buzz about blockchain, period. The progress in healthcare has been fairly significant over the last 12 months. So we recently joined a health utility network, which is an IBM-sponsored consortium with other major players across healthcare. And we're getting together because you don't play blockchain by yourself, right? So you need partners. You need enough critical mass across the industry for adoption. So, if I talk a little bit about how we see that impacting healthcare, there's three quick use cases. So you all know blockchain, basically creating that trusted source of, trusted ledger that acts as a source of truth across a disparate ecosystem. And healthcare is a very disparate ecosystem. So we're starting off with very simple use cases. So, non-controversial use cases. So, provider data. So getting the right data, just, which doctors are in which location, what's their specialty, what are they, certification and so forth. That's industry information. Everyone struggles with it. So there's a lot of momentum behind that use case to make, blockchain the trusted ledger for that. A couple of other examples that we see coming up. One is, again, a little bit into healthcare speak here, so I'll be quick. One is the shared accumulator. So, as you have a deductible, we have pharmacy benefits, we've got medical benefits, you've got lots of different providers. They all count towards a deductible. That's really hard to keep track of. Again, a central source of truth in a blockchain. It's the sort of thing that brings significant efficiencies there. And then something we call coordination of benefits, which is where there are multiple insurance companies through co-insurance, and how do we coordinate there? So these are, kind of solving some of those really intractable challenges for the industry that's unlocked purely through technology capabilities. And then just a couple of words, if I can, Hardik, on some of these further out areas, which are very, very exciting. And one of the key things about emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, don't think about them as one at a time, right? The kind of multiplying effect you get, that exponential growth that Bob talked about, comes when you combine those technologies together. So when I think about healthcare of the future and the primary care experience of the future, it's going to be so much higher quality in a virtual setting than it is in a physical setting today. Think about the combination of virtual and augmented reality to make an immersive experience in your living room, in your study, wherever you are. Combine that with sensors. So you've got sensors that are picking up information real time on your condition. You combine that with the digitization of the genome, right, which within a year is going to be, or a couple of years, it's going to be less than $1 to have a digital sequence genome. So that will be a ubiquitous fact. You look at precision medicine that comes with that. You mash all this together into a deep, kind of very pervasive view of the patient with artificial intelligence and analytics running it. You're going to have a significantly higher quality preventative care experience, and it's going to basically avoid care and improve wellness for members. So whether the timing here, this 5+ years is there, healthcare is going to be fundamentally changed by the technologies on this chart.
Fantastic. This is, and we can share this chart with whoever wants this, right?
Yeah, happy to share. We've used it as a tool for our employees, but not the technology folks, our employees. And the secret sauce behind this is a clickable, it's basically a big clickable document that goes into how we're using it, where we're seeing in the industry, and so forth.
Nice.
So rather than Googling stuff,
Yeah.
our employees can go here and look at it in our context.
Very, very interesting. So, any questions yet? We haven't stirred thoughts enough, maybe. Or maybe more coffee. Oh, there it is.
I've got a question. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of businesses, it's clear to see how the use of disruptive technology has kind of impacted their core mission. I'm curious for Justin if there's evidence you can point to. If you assume that winning football games is a core mission of an NFL team, if there's evidence you can point to that the use of technology, use of disruptive technology is translating to on-field results. I guess maybe are there things that Patriots are doing that the Cleveland Browns aren't? From a technology perspective, you can kind of point to.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to today after this session driving down to the combine, and we have some in Indianapolis, and we have some technology sessions where my peers and we get together and just kind of discuss, and even at happy hours, just sort of talk to them. And I think what you'll sort of start to understand, or what I've started to understand, is that kind of you mentioned two teams there. The reputation of those teams sometimes and oftentimes kind of follows their technology organizations as well. You'll hear things from some clubs that 10 years ago we won the Super Bowl with 2 IT guys. Why would we need any more now? So there is a huge cultural shift that I think holds a lot of clubs back because they've been very successful and they aren't necessarily progressively thinking about really the value that can be unlocked by investing in technology. They just see it as like a lot of companies do, a cost center and isn't a true enabler. So I don't want to get into names, but yeah, you definitely see that layout on the field. And I'm excited because I think we're one of the clubs that is very enabled to take advantage of what's coming. And I think you saw a lot of it of that this year, actually.
Do anyone of you want to take that to your industry? The same question. Is there a competitive difference between using technology between two organizations?
Yeah, I think that absolutely. And for us, we think about competition, but we think about how to drive the best experience for our members. Right? We're member owned, and that's really what drives us. And by doing that, we've been very successful in the marketplace as well. So I believe that the solutions that we are now deploying are going to help our members navigate to care more effectively. It's going to help us connect with them to provide advice to care sooner than they otherwise would, which is going to improve their wellness, right, and their care, which happens to then mean that it's more, there's less cost associated, which obviously makes us more successful as a business. But we are driven by the member outcomes and the member experience, and I believe that staying true to that purpose and leveraging the technology to drive it is differentiating. The one other piece or maybe 2 other quick pieces I'd say is we are very committed to enabling the healthcare ecosystem. So blockchain was an example, but the use of APIs and these FHIR standards, which is a healthcare messaging standard, we believe we can make the ecosystem more efficient by being a leader in that space. So by having care through Blue Cross Blue Shield, you'll be able to more seamlessly integrate through the system. And then the third thing is where we we have a big initiative around community health. So, we believe that by marrying the services we provide with wraparound services that address the social determinants of health, as 80% of the drivers of healthcare are non-medical, right? So it's the social factors. We believe that bringing technology into that space and creating more of an immersive environment for our members is also going to differentiate us.
Yeah, and quickly, I'll add an additional perspective to piggyback on what was shared. And you kind of touched on this actually in your answer. So when I started at GE, a few years back, it was after they started running all those GE digital commercials, if anyone remembers that. Do we have any GE alums in the audience, by the way? Are you really? From what group?
It was aircraft engines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you guys are doing well. You can buy stock in the little pieces, man. So I had a lot of people approach me and say, I saw the commercial on TV, and I'm being told that we're digital, but I don't know what that means. And I don't know, I don't feel digital. Am I supposed to do something different? Is there another digital team? And then there's our team. And so I have gotten to the point where it's just becoming so, you're going to use digital data and technology to drive business change. And so what I found is there are some organizations and there are some business leaders that when we use the word digital, it actually creates an otherness. There's the digital folks, there's the technology folks, and then there's the business. Because of that one word. So if that's your organization, stop using the word. Because it's silly, but there are a lot of folks who feel like they're not empowered, they don't understand it. The reality is that I would love to know a business situation where you're not using digital technology to drive an outcome change. I haven't thought of one yet. So if we drop that word, if you're in an organization where you're noticing that people are keeping it as another, or it's becoming divisive, then it's just driving business outcomes. And here are the methodologies and the tactics that we're going to use to get there. And I think that's how technology is going to drive a lot of change. But I don't know if that really answers your question, but you brought it up, and it was an experience I had for over 2 years working in an organization. And it genuinely broke my heart that people thought they weren't a part of it because they weren't a digital team member. And that's just fundamentally not true, because they all have smartphones and they use computers, and by default, you are now digital. And it took me a while to say, well, let's just get rid of the word. What are we saying? What does that mean? And so we did a language exercise and we did workshops to say, if we got rid of this word digital, what are we trying to do? Because our customers hated it too. I mean, there were customers who were like, yeah, I get it, digital, but what are you? So what? So you're going to make me more money? Are you going to save me money? And so we found that in certain business circumstances, completely removing the word got over that hump and got over that otherness and the jargon and just got to the point, which is, whatever it is. I'm going to make you more money. I'm going to save you money. I'm going to help you expand into, a tangential business. Yeah.
And so technology does have this tendency of creating divides, what we call the digital divides. We have talked about those divides in the society, in the cities, but there's also a divide that gets created within a corporation, a company. I mean, if it's not treated and managed properly and messaged properly. I have a couple more questions, unless anybody, you went first and then you.
And I come from the wireless industry, and it's almost refreshing to not hear the word 5G in the first 5 seconds.
We have tried to stay away from technology.
It begs the question, why has no one brought up 5G? Is any of the applications that you're talking about not dependent on 5G? Or is that just assume that it will be here soon? Can you just sort of go down that road, even though I'm actually enjoying that? You're not going there.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely one of the kind of disruptors that we expect to come soon in terms of delivering our fans an experience that is much more seamless, and we aren't worrying about crutches like a Wi-Fi system or beacons in our stadium. Just that overall fan experience, to connect with them in the right time, provide them relevant experiences that are customized to them, I think is going to be a huge game changer. From a networking perspective, it just opens up so many doors for us that we're starting to think about now through partnerships with folks like Verizon. And
So from my perspective, kind of the application of our technologies into the business space, I try to avoid like that specific phrase because I think it causes more questions. But what we're doing is just architecting solutions, knowing, that we have to be operating in a world that's going to fundamentally work different. So if you think about like building a house, so in my mind, that's how I'm architecting these customer experiences solutions, knowing that the systems that are running it are going to operate different, look different. The expectations are going to be radically different in 3 to 5 years or 1 year. And so I'm kind of pushing teams to say, assume this is taken care of. What is that going to be like? Assume this world exists. Does this still work the same way? And so trying to create, without getting too into the weeds on it, getting them to stretch their minds, because a lot of folks are in different spaces, to think like consumers and say, yeah, like a buffering experience isn't very much fun, is it? Imagine if it happens right away. Now think about what we're building. Can that work? When we get to that point, is this going to work the way that we need it to work? And so I'm kind of almost helping teams like yours be more effective by futurely architecting solutions that will run on the new technology.
Yeah, and just a quick word. I think about 5G as an accelerator. So if you look at the emerging technologies or disruptive technologies on the radar, one thing most of them have in common is a massive amount of data, and being able to bring those together and create an experience that's meaningful to our members at the point of care through a digital channel is one of the critical experiences we're trying to drive. So is it a real pain point bottleneck right now? No. Right? Do I think it's going to unlock the ability to have the all of those that immersive experience that I talked about as part of our future? Is it going to bring that quicker? Absolutely. So we'll be probably a fast follow on establishing that, knowing that it's enabling our future.
I think accelerator is a really good word for that.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, is it going to change the game, and when's it coming?
That's what I've been telling government officials across the country. So probably, by the time handsets get in the public's hand, probably going to be a couple of years yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw.
We're going to have the technology out there probably within a year to use, but then everyone's going to have to get phones, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just want to set, just think about 2007, 2008. I remember when I was CIO for Chicago, we had an RFP out there for a ubiquitous municipal Wi-Fi, where we can provide everybody free Wi-Fi access. And at that time, the condition that we had put on the respondents was you need to provide everyone ubiquitous Wi-Fi at 1 megabit per second best efforts. And from there, we have come so far, literally in a decade, and we'll continue moving at that speed of disruption. You had a question, and then we'll wrap up after that.
Going back to what you said earlier, Kim, this digital divide, and I get that. I've worked at a number of companies where they've actually created the digital organization separate from IT or marketing or any other business unit.
Interesting.
Why do you think that's happening? Because, as I look at some of those organizations I've worked with, which are Fortune 500 companies,
Yeah.
the talent exists in those individual departments, but for some reason, they decide to create a separate organization, recruit from the outside, and bring in all this new talent.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? So there was, I'm going to answer your question with a little story, and then I'll get to that. So when I was at Northwestern, I took a really interesting class on the technology of war. And if you
Technology
think
of?
war.
War.
And if you think about wars in the past, the way that we fight is always like one war, or the way that we defend is always like one war behind where we should be, right? So people are still doing trench warfare, and then there's airplanes. And it's like, oh, they can get in the trenches because you have a plane now. So they're always like one step behind. They're imitating what they knew before in a world that's fundamentally different. The same thing is true with a lot of organizational design. 15 years ago, that 100% made sense because no one knew what to do with a mobile app. No one even knew if they needed a mobile app. They had these smartphones, and they're like, I don't know, We don't want to just have everyone running around in our real teams doing this. So let's kind of build a little incubator group and let's build an app and let's just see what happens. You know, this idea of mobile websites. Remember, everyone had a separate mobile website and we weren't really driving traffic to it. We just had it to like see what it looked like and what does that feel like. And is everyone going to use tablets? And how is that going to work? And so 10 years ago, that made absolute sense. And so I think that's what's happening, is we're just taking that same concept, and I hate to use war analogies, but that same concept of kind of doing what we know versus doing what we think we need to know, and the business risk of that business leaders are under. It's a lot safer to use a model that was proven in the past, but the reality is it's just so fundamentally different, it ignores the current reality. And so I really try to appreciate that people are truly doing the best that they can do. And so that's typically how I frame it. Like, this made sense. I absolutely understand why you did that. It worked, and now we need to shift. Because you can activate talent in all the other organizations, and everyone should be a part of this. Now, the idea is potentially those business organizations, those digital units, can maybe be kind of matrixed in and like kind of be the owners of this and make sure that every group is aligning to not only their business goals, but also kind of innovating and in that explore stage. So when things do kind of come to fruition, the business is moving together as a unit. But I truly believe that's what it is, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the model you just explained made absolute sense, and the world has moved so fast that in no other period of time would implementing a model 10 years old not make sense, except today.
You know,
And it just doesn't make sense anymore.
one thing just to build on that
Yeah.
is what I've seen as an evolution is a move to a common experience that you're trying to drive. So digital organizations were stood up more from a technology perspective, and then maybe you're trying to disrupt the business. This is our digital group, and it was all very organizationally frictional, right?
Yeah.
It really created a lot of churn. But one of the things you have to be careful of is if you're like, oh, everyone's digital. Everyone's creating digital, but there's only one, first there's one member, right? So how does this experience converge onto that member?
Correct.
And so you've got to have that common sense of, who are the personas, what are the journeys, what are the micro journeys, and those cut across the organization, that you've got to have some way to coordinate. So.
Yeah, this is going to be like a total shameless plug, but to be centrally human, right? So
Yeah.
build your company brand, understand, if your technology team goes out and that they're all digital and so they build an app, and it's like, but that doesn't make sense. Why did we just build an app? And this happened at GE. It was like, well, are we going to be the platform? Do we build on Azure? Are we going to, our customers already have this, so is it a rip and replace? Is it an add-on? What are we trying to do here? And so yes, I 100% agree. Know who you are, know what's appropriate, build in that experience, so then when people are thinking about it, they will naturally come up with, hopefully, digital solutions. And build that into the culture. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely.
And you may have started wrapping it up, Kim. We'll come back to Kim, Justin, and Steve in that order. I mean, these guys have spent precious 1 hour here with us. They could have had warmer breakfast at home. They could have spent an extra hour in bed. They could have voted 3 more times today if they're Chicago residents. What is the key, from your point of view, a call to action or a key takeaway for us to take home from this? Starting with Kim and then Justin and Steve. Or change the order if you need.
I'm ready if you want to
Yeah,
go.
go for it.
Reverse order. So we've used an approach called backcasting, and so I want to leave this little nugget with you. And what that involves is imagining potential futures for your business based on these emerging technologies. So take the constraints off. What is our business going to be like in a decade plus, driven by the emerging technologies on that radar or other ones that you think are relevant? Then you backcast from there. Said, if I believe this future, what would I do now? Right? Where would I have to need to be in 2 years? Where would I need to be in 5 years? Where would I need to be in 10 years? And that actually takes an amorphous concept and helps guide you on what do I do now. And you don't know which potential future is going to be accurate, but the starting steps may adjust a little bit, but there's a way to create action from this kind of landscape.
I'll go a little more philosophical with the answer. I think one thing I've always tried to embrace is the power of youth in our organizations. So we've touched on this quite a bit here. In terms of, we're so hierarchical in a lot of our organizations, but I've always tried to look at younger employees as people that just happen to start their career after me. A lot of times they're much smarter than I am, much more capable. And so where I've seen a lot of success, it sort of goes back to a professor I had in grad school. His name was C.K. Prahalad. And he was a big fan of enabling organizations through finding the talent in their youth. And he would go to large companies, BP was one of the big examples, and he would take a humanitarian problem that was out there, sort of related to their business, and he would ask them for their 5 to 10 most talented young people, and he would go solve some global humanitarian issue or address it. And really what that's about is finding that talent, understanding that there's so much capability there with just a little bit of direction, and then get the hell out of the way. And so I think that involves, in terms of a call to action, is sort of flattening whether or not, regardless of what your hierarchy is and your org structure, flattening culturally and enabling those people to use their brains. The other thing about them, and we've laughed about this even before the session, is they're just digitally native, much more than we are. So conceptually, these things are just ingrained in them much better than it is for us. So there's so much value in enabling them and, like I said, get out of the way.
That's fantastic. And by the way, all of us in this room can offer you any help you need to observe a live game and see how technology can be applied. Just let us know.
Yeah.
We'll always help.
Yeah. So actually, building on both Steve and Justin's answers, I would think about your company as a human being. If your company was a person, who would it be? What technologies would they use? Would they be sitting in front of the couch watching TV? Are they just not on a lot of devices? Are they very email focused? Who is your business? And really challenge your marketing leaders and your executives to say, who are we as a company? Because we've been chasing this idea of adopting and innovating, but now it's all out there and you can't be everything for everyone. So who are we? And as we design that roadmap and look at our future selves, and as we activate our young people, they're going to have that question. Okay, I've got all these ideas, but who are we? Like, what's the point? And once we understand that, like that soul of your business, that's where you can really start driving innovation deep. So understand that. And I would say as an extension of that, and really my personal call to action as a consumer, as a citizen of the world, really look, as you diversify your teams, age, gender, education background, socioeconomic background, if your teams don't reflect your customers and the world that we live in, there's no way that they're going to build a product. It's not fair to them. They can't build a product. They can't build a business that's going to reflect their customer base in the future. We need 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds on these teams because that's a massive buying power. That's a massive corporate executive on our base. We need an ethics person on those teams to help tackle some of those questions. You need someone that's come from total scholarship, lower economic, who probably learned how to code at a coding school and might not have a bachelor's degree. Get that person on your team. So really, as we're thinking about this idea of diversity, it's not so you can check a box, it's so you can actually design products that your customer base is going to want to absorb. And as human beings in this world, as we do get into AI, that's the world I want to live in. I want to know the people building the machine learning and the artificial intelligence reflect the world that we do live in and reflect the customers of the company that you truly are.
Excellent. So build your business looking into the future, be philosophical about it also, and then keep the person at the center. Kim, Justin, Steve, thank you very much. Excellent thoughts, excellent ideas. Bob, thank you very much for getting a great panel together.
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Lafferty. I am one of the co-chairs of the Business Technology Forum with Bob Kress. And thank you again to this wonderful moderator and panelist. A few observations, and I'm very proud of the Business Technology Group. This is the first event in 5 years. I was keeping score back there. We set the record for the number of uses of culture, humans and experience. So for the Business Technology Forum, that's really a record for us. We also we got close, but we never mentioned millennials. So I think it's been a long time since we did that. So again, thank you. And I know we need to get Justin to Indy quickly for the Combine. So once again, thank you all for coming. Our next Business Technology Forum event will be discussing cybersecurity and cyber threats. That will be on April 9th at the Chicago Architectural Center. We hope to see everybody there. So with that, have a great day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.